Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Boring Enterprise Nerdcast. We have our host, myself, Elena Perfilieva, and my partner, Paul Moderman. And we have very exciting guest with us today. It's James Olcott. James, I will let you introduce yourself in a second, but just want to say we're very excited to talk to you today because you're our first functional SAP consultant in all of our podcast. So we're very excited to talk to you about your craft and your expertise, and to hear more from you. And Paul, please say hi to everyone.
Hi, this is Paul. Hi, everyone.
And James, if you could just introduce yourself briefly to our listeners and viewers, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Yelena. Paul, good to be here and join you on the podcast. I'm a seasoned, experienced SAP consultant, plying the waters of the SAP ecosystem for, just about 25 years now. It's been an incredible journey. I've been on over 25 projects. I've seen a lot of different work circumstances and some very similar usages of SAP. There's a great commonality between the way all of my clients have been using SAP over the years. And as you mentioned, I recently did, oh, look at that. It's not really showing my book very
there
well.
It is. There it is.
You have to move like very specific.
He wrote an invisible book, guys. It's crazy.
Yes, exactly. I didn't know I could make myself disappear by just, mentioning my book here. But anyway, if you can't see it, it's Sales and Distribution with SAP S/4HANA Business User Guide, published by SAP Press. This book was kind of like a mini project in its own terms, for sure.
And we will have a link for viewers in our YouTube video description, definitely. So James, we're curious. So what prompted you to write this book?
Being unemployed with COVID-19.
Oh, that's a good.
I had a lot of time on my hands, and at that very moment, as I was sitting out by the pool in the summer of 2020, a solicitation came in from SAP Press. I'd been discussing with them, over some time about the possibility of writing a book. I was always concerned that the time necessary to write the book would detract from my project work. So here it happened. It came in at just the right time when my project had shut down because of COVID, and it was the perfect time. And I wrote the first chapter sitting out by the pool. And one of the interesting things about writing the book about a SAP, writing an SAP manual type of book is that SAP Press could not provide me with an SAP system.
Yeah.
They could not.
That's very,
and interestingly enough, I had done a project maybe 2-3 years previous where I was an SAP trainer, and the client wasn't able to provide me access to the SAP training system. That's a good one, right? You're an SAP consultant. Welcome to our project. Oh, I'm sorry, our security doesn't allow you access to our SAP system. And the way I overcame that deficit, and it wasn't a minor deficit. This was, I figured this was a big one, and I could think of some colorful expressions in French that I could use on this new client. But rather than explaining to them, the necessity of having a working SAP system, out of the goodness of my heart, I don't know how I must have been feeling very, very beneficent. I actually went and I found my own SAP server in India for $20 a month. And then for that project 2-3 years prior, I configured it over the weekend. So when I arrived back to do my training course, I had a copy of their system, using their data. And for all intents and purposes, I could do the training with a demo system on my own personal laptop. So with that experience in mind, since they couldn't provide me with access, I went back to my system. They had an S/4HANA version that I could use. So I logged into that, configured the whole thing out by the pool, and got it working. So then I could have a working system with which to do screen print. Very important for a software manual to have.
Very important,
right?
So you had a co-author with this book too, right?
Yes,
Yes.
fortunately.
Yes. What was the because I think a lot of our listeners and viewers have kind of an itch to do books at some point in their life, in their career, whatever. How long for for this book that you guys did? What was the duration start to finish of the whole project, and what did the writing process look like for you guys?
I think we wrote the first chapter in August of 2020.
Hmm.
And, as a trial balloon to see, to get the initial comments from the publisher to see if it was in their wheelhouse and, get everything ironed out. They approved the first chapter. And then we set about that fall, 2020, to write, something like 12 chapters. And we
Uh,
split it up between the two of us. So the co-author is an interesting story in and of itself. So, as you know, I was anxious about the time necessary to do this. And so I felt that the way to mitigate that, and I was in the process of interviewing, and as I anticipated sitting out by the pool in August, I did have a very good potential project that eventually signed in September, and I started with them in October. So I was almost prescient in my feeling that I needed to have a co-author to share the burden of the work.
yeah.
So how did I find a co-author?
Yeah.
It's not like I could, go around the pool and ask family members, "Hey, I'm writing a book. Why don't you help me write?" No.
Come on, yeah.
My family members, they're specialists in other, areas
Yeah.
of endeavor. So they weren't the right people to help me with this. So, as Yelena will tell you, LinkedIn is a wonderful thing.
Mm,
Sometimes, yeah,
And
it can be.
it can be, yeah.
it can be. There are some fakes out there and fraudsters, just like any other social media site, but
Sure.
they're easy to smoke out. So I looked through my catalog of LinkedIn contacts, and I wondered who else struck me as being an SD knowledgeable person and who seemed to also have an ability to write. And I very quickly found, one person who was engaging, put out a lot of material. His name is John Simons. He's out of England and writes very well. He writes the King's English.
Mhm.
So, which later on caused some difficulties because we're using two different versions of the English language.
Mm.
And, he was trying to persuade me that my version of English wasn't really, the home country English. And I had to persuade him that, we revolted against the home country for very good reasons. And maybe they should, anyway, we weren't able to resolve that at all.
Yeah.
But he, in spite of that, the tremendous cultural divide, we were able to, he quickly impressed me with his knowledge and his ability to write. Perfect. This is the guy who is out of the box. I mean, as demonstrated by LinkedIn, and you can go look at his page on LinkedIn. He's a wonderful person, John Simon, very knowledgeable. He comes out with a couple of tips a week. His broadcast ability as a writer is phenomenal. And so we just in the first conversation, I could tell this was the guy to help me with this burden. And so very easily we split up the tasks of writing the first chapter, writing the rest of the chapters. I took on the burden of doing the configuration for the system just because I like doing that, and we'll talk about configuration and customization later on in this discussion. But I love doing the whole soup to nuts. SAP model company, no, it's my job. That's my job. Back off, and it doesn't work anyway. You do the model.
That's
company,
true.
You have to do your configuration afterwards anyway. So color me doubtful on that. So I did the config, and we finished the last chapter up in February or March of 21. Whereupon they reviewed it, and now you have the wonderful book I'm negotiating movie rights with HBO, and hopefully I'll have some news about that. Hopefully, over maybe Monday or Tuesday. I
It'll
expect to
be
have a call back.
it'll
Yeah,
be a gritty sci-fi noir, the set in the early 20s, and some
exactly.
steampunk robots and stuff. Yeah, oh yeah, I can see it right
Awesome.
now.
It's going to be big.
So I just want to go slightly back to what you mentioned, the difficulty of getting access to the test or some kind of training system in SAP. And I think it's already not great for developers, but it's even worse for anyone who does anything more than development. And for developers, it's suddenly, we just got news yesterday that ABAP trial in Docker, it's gone, baby, gone. It's no longer available. And I believe that might actually affect pretty much all the ABAP trial desktop installations. So our only choices would become essentially SAP Cloud Appliance Library, CAL, which is technically, ABAP trial itself is free, but you have to pay for cloud services, which are pretty expensive. And even more so, you can also get like fully activated S/4HANA systems there, but that costs definitely much more than
Yeah.
$20 per month.
Yeesh.
Cost is enormous. So I honestly do not understand what SAP is thinking, telling, oh yes, there's future, everyone needs to learn. How are they supposed to do that? I truly do not understand when
Yeah.
they seem to just on some quest to make this as difficult for everyone as possible. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I think everyone was
Time
pretty,
for
yeah.
a quick Yelena rant there.
Yeah, quick side rant. So
Sidebar rant.
everyone was pretty sad to get those
Yeah.
news about ABAP yesterday. All right,
Yeah.
so James, as I mentioned, you are our first guest that is non-developer, and there's been a lot of talk about low-code, no-code solutions. And since they are technically supposed to be really for the people like you and supposedly for business users, what do you think about that? Have you ever met
Have
them
you
in the wild?
seen him, used him at all?
A no-code solution
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the SAP space. Frankly, I can't imagine it. Now, I mean, you might think that's strange coming from a functional consultant. Don't we functional consultants want to do away with the coding and all that stuff? Well, when there's always a pain point for a functional consultant when you enter a new project and you hit the Z tables and you hit the Z functionality, because if they don't tell you, and most projects, it's pretty much they throw you into the deep end of the pool carrying 50-pound weights and go for it. It's a standard. So in other words, I expect any new project to hit Z functionality and Z tables that people, oops, we forgot to tell you. And so the way I look at it, the fact of the matter is that every business has exceptional business processes that fall outside of the configurable solution. And for that reason, you need developers. And, I wish I could debug better than I can. I actually tried it again this week at my current project, and I was able to find the error message. And I was very proud of myself as a functional consultant being able to do that with the debugger. But, we do need coders to write the code. We need coders to come in when the code has been written badly by predecessing coders, and they need to figure out what the hell is going on and debug and to fix broken code. It's a necessary evil, and not to say that you two are evil.
Well,
not at all. That's not what I'm saying.
I mean, you could make that argument. I think some of my former employers might say, "Nah, he is at least chaotic evil." Yeah.
Right. So it seems to me to be entirely necessary, and I would say it's unrealistic. Sure, SAP can tell you all kinds of things. It does, I suppose, but in the real world, where real companies exist, where on-prem will always have a place, I think you're going to have customized solutions, and you'll have coders. And no code, tell me another fairy tale. I love them.
So okay, so that I think this kind of dovetails with what we briefly discussed before we started here on that S4 path of, hey, what's the deal with Rise? What's the deal with cloud solutions that don't have customizations, all that kind of good stuff. What are you seeing in the S4 universe? Both, I guess there's two sides to this question, and maybe we can come back to one of the other side is one is how realistic is it to get like a vanilla cloud SAP S4 system that you can just plug in and go? But also on a different sense, and this is two very different questions, I'm just blabbing them out now. In a different sense, what is like from your perspective in the SD supply chain kind of world, what does S4 offer above and beyond what ECC um, was offering prior to that?
Well, you have the promise of Fiori, and
Mhm.
in this case, I would say it's more than a promise. You know, as a dyed-in-the-wool functional consultant, I grew up using SAP GUI,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So the initial reaction to Fiori is, what's the big deal? So what? I like my transaction codes, but as some members of my family have explained to me, the world does not rotate around me. Okay, I have to be aware and acknowledge
hmm
that fact. New people come into SAP and they don't know transaction codes, and Fiori makes things very easy in terms of user experience, and you can put it on multiple devices, including iPhones and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And you have dashboards and a lot of bells and whistles. Um, even myself, my most of my S4 HANA projects don't even use Fiori. Isn't that amazing?
That
As
is, I
good as it
mean,
is,
that is actually kind of amazing. Yeah.
yeah, as
Yeah.
interesting and as full of promise as it is, it's not being widely adapted because us fuddy-duddy IT people, we just like SAP GUI, and we just go from there.
Right.
So I would tend to think that there's a lot, and that's new for S4 HANA to SAP GUI. Then on the other hand, you have all the behind the scenes, the back engine enhancements and improvements within S4 HANA, which are uh, well, from a data diving point of view, you can get your data fetches much more quickly by columnar orientation within data tables and such kind of innovations, which are database specific, and the average business person doesn't necessarily understand what these are, but they are there. And you have before all that, the HANA hardware appliance that would
Yeah. Yeah.
fetch data even quicker and those kinds of things. So
Yep.
there's a lot behind the scenes. There are data table improvements like the new OCDACA, which replaces BSEG, I think it is, and consolidates the financial information. So there are some rationalizations within the program that maybe aren't so apparent if you're using the GUI screens, which look just the same as ECC.
Okay, so your customers or your clients who make that journey, what's their reaction? Do they also love the table slimming down and the Fiori stuff too?
Not so much. When I'm working with a client who's new to S4 HANA and new to SAP, they're
Uh,
struggling, to ramp up and to
sure.
understand the logic behind the program and the rationale behind, SAP. What is it when you boil it down? It's a dual entry accounting system,
Yeah. Yeah.
that self audits and self controls and implements accounting standards upfront to the users so they don't input garbage. This is a major innovation over the competing systems like Microsoft Dynamics and JD Edwards and Oracle, where, oh, do it your way. Go ahead and put in garbage, and the accounting department will clean it up later. In SAP's world, nein, das ist nichts gut. Nein. I love my German friends.
Yeah.
They demand an intelligent, trained workforce, and that's a challenge. training people to use SAP. I've done a lot of trainings. I think it's easy to do, but a lot of projects put training to the back burner to their detriment. And this is where a lot of problems come in, because then you get intelligent business users who just haven't been trained.
Yeah.
Not good, so that's a hurdle to get over. Maybe a Fiori addresses this by making it very customized for the user to overcome the potentially unwieldy feeling and nature of the SAP program, where you are required to put in good data anytime you hit the book.
Right. So, okay. So we talked a little bit about S4. We talked a little bit about upgrades and low code and that stuff. So let's turn to a different place a little bit here, because you've been in the game as a consultant for a number of years now. What kind of career advice would you give somebody kind of hopping into where you are earlier in their career? What would you tell younger James about what you've been up to, and advice and wisdom and the fruits of the tree of knowledge and all this kind of stuff?
Well, there were two trees in the Garden of Eden. There was the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And then there was the second tree.
Yeah.
The second tree was the tree of eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
And when they ate from the first tree of good and knowledge, and they started looking at the second tree, that's when things went south. You guys out now. So what would I say? As a general principle, and this works for any kind of career, be inquisitive, be passionate, generate great questions, push yourself to ask questions, even if they're stupid questions. That's a big hurdle, because I know from my early beginnings that I was absolutely terrified in some projects because I didn't understand the thing that was going on.
Right.
But you soak it up, you soak it up, you gain familiarity with the terms. Another thing I would say is that within the SAP space, if you're like me, you're a consultant, you get to see a lot of different companies. Some companies, the atmosphere is happy. You have absolutely fascinating business meetings where you're working with talented people who are asking the right questions. And the meetings are just a joy to sit through because you feel an elevation of comprehension and you identify the issues and you keep going through it. Then you have other types of projects, typically an acquisition type situations where you're working for the acquired company, and the darkness, the dark force is very strong there, and can I help you with that? No, this is mine. I'll do this work because I'm afraid for my job. The point I'm trying to make is that there's a wide variety of projects out there, and what I would say to you is, be not afraid. If you're in a sucky project, vote with your feet, give them notice, and let your feet do the walking. And that's not to say that every project I've left was a sucky project. I've left very good projects as well. You might have different reasons why you want to do this, but a sucky project identifies itself pretty quickly. Don't tolerate them. The job market out there is very strong right now for SAP consultants, until the Federal Reserve tears up the economy. So it should be good for another couple of days, and
until next Wednesday, take James's advice.
Until they raise the Fed rate again. But the market is strong. Be proactive. Use LinkedIn like Elena and I do. Broadcast your knowledge. Contribute to conversation. Make intelligent comments. That's a challenge for me because I've struggled with that one. And I took it to the limit, and I wrote the SAP manual for S/4HANA for sales and distribution, which was just a whole lot of fun. And I was able to make it even more fun by having such a wonderful co-author join me on that project.
Interesting. Okay, our young listeners, snip that audio out and take the advice.
Yeah.
Yelena, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Yelena. Sorry about that.
No, I wanted to ask James for advice on another matter. I think as we all have been in SAP consulting for some time, and we all probably familiar with that famous tire swing kind of pre-meme that's been going around in SAP world, where different pictures show like what client wanted, what client was promised, what was delivered, and etc. So different pictures, and it's commonly known as a tire swing memes these days, because client really wanted just a tire swing, but they were promised in like a Disneyland type of roller coaster, and were charged for that, but they were delivered something really strange. So, and there are multiple parties in that problem. Typically, it's customers themselves, it's maybe delivery team and consultants. But let's say, James, from your perspective, what advice would you give to the clients that are wanting tire swing and to the consultants in that situation?
I typically see in my career the opposite happening. I see the client saying they want a tire swing on Monday. On Tuesday, they want to change the rope. On Wednesday, they want to change the tire. On Thursday, they want to not put the tire swing on the tree, but they want to build a particular device to hang the now reconfigured swing with handles. And so on and so forth. I'm making an allusion, of course, to scope creep, which is a terrible problem. And this is controlled by effective use of a parking lot, where you take new, great ideas and you say phase 2 and phase 3, and you categorize them. And through a Socratic process, you achieve each milestone and keep building in a structured way. That way, you can always take advantage of great ideas that come along, because they will come along as you do your work. You'll always see something new and something to be added. The nature of your question, Yelena, was kind of like the opposite, where the client, just wants a very rudimentary object, and the consultants, I don't see that very much. I'm struggling to see where the consultants, ganged up and continuously contributed to ever-increasing complexity. Consultants, like myself, we're always struggling with the client to keep things simple. So I'm going to challenge you on your premise. I think it's the other way around. I think it's the client who keeps, coming up with new ideas and burdening you see, it's just like, building a bridge, a software project. It looks like it works by magic, but it's not. It's really an engineering project. You have a specification. We're going to build a bridge across this part of the river. It's going to have so many lanes. It's going to go in this direction. And once you set the design, don't you go adding more lanes to your bridge.
Right.
The Tacoma Bridge collapsed in the late 1930s because, in that case, they didn't do enough knowledge of the effect of the wind and the construction of the bridge. So that they had some bad design principles, but the analogy still holds. You have to approach it carefully and respectfully. And if you do want to add a new deck on the bridge or add some more lanes, you park that idea, build your bridge first, and maybe you'll build a second bridge, or maybe you'll reinforce the bridge and put in a second deck. But take things carefully and slowly. And I see that as what the consultants contribute to the project in the face of ever-increasing client demands. It's just my point of view.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe developers are more exposed to more, I don't know, frivolous requirements, like maybe just by nature of our work, because when it hits developers, then it's sometimes such a weird stuff, to be honest. And I did have some experience in my past where I see really, really bizarre requests coming from the clients, and I try to understand what is really, like, what do you want, like, really? What, like, tell me what you want, what you really, really want, not to steal from the Spice Girls. But I think that sometimes the issue that's kind of, affecting some of the projects, where instead of communicating, hey, you know what, we really want just a tire swing, somehow it gets, wrapped in many, many additional details, and then it gets to development stage somehow. So, but I think it's very interesting observation. I like your analogy about engineering projects. So that's what I will use with many clients that have exactly the issues that you're describing.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, people look at code and software as if it works by magic, and
Yeah.
you are the architects, you are the ditch diggers that are actually, making it happen. And, I feel sometimes that you probably have a terrible burden with people the business coming to you and say, oh, just add this, and, oh, it's just a small thing to add to it. Oh, this small thing, that small thing, and voila. You have a bridge that collapses because you scotch tape too many burdens on your design. So careful with that,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've seen some scotch tape messes in my life. I completely concur with that. So James, I know we talked about this briefly before our recording session here. Let's gaze into the crystal ball. Let's talk about predicting the future. Let's talk about Nostradamus on the podcast here. Give us your view of what the future holds for SAP, S4, SD, all that kind of space that you're in. Tell us your Karnak, Nostradamus, whatever prediction of that stuff.
Yeah, we talked about this briefly, and I shared with you how 2 years ago I was just traveling through Germany on personal business, and I happened to call up a friend at SAP in Waldorf, and they said to me, hey, can I introduce you to my friend Dr. Horst? Dr. Horst is in charge of the development and R&D for the new version of SAP after S/4HANA, and I'm moderately curious, as you know, and I just happened to be in the neighborhood, and so I put down my beer and I said, yeah, sure, I'll be over tomorrow morning. Show me what you got. So I met Dr. Horst in his laboratory, and he showed me the new SAP system. It's going to be still like 5 or 10 years into the future, but I think it was utterly fascinating. It's called T5 Mona, and
T5 Mona.
It uses, for one thing, it uses the Internet of Everything. Have you heard of the Internet of Everything?
No.
Everything?
Internet of Everything, huh?
The Internet of Everything is that everything is connected. And as an example, Dr. Horst, he pointed me over to the coffee maker, and he said, go over to the coffee maker and look into the 2 little red lights. And I did that, and out popped a coffee exactly the way I take it, with a little bit of half and half and brown sugar. And I said to Dr. Horst, how did it know the way I take my coffee? And he says, it knows, and it's part of the SAP system. So right from the get-go, I was very impressed by the system. It uses hand gestures. You've noticed the way I move my hands around. Yeah. So you can use hand gestures to create sales. He showed me the this SD system. So I could use the hand gesture, this way would create the sales order. This way would create the delivery, and this would create the billing. And so it was utterly fascinating the way it works. The data tables have all been revised. They got rid of Okdaka from S/4HANA, and it's now it's like Lord of the Rings. You had 9 rings, and then you had 1 ring to control them all.
Yeah.
So now they eliminated all data tables. Everything is in one data table called .taco.
That's incredible. I mean,
I was blown away. Yeah, wow,
That's wow. I'm so glad that they let you into the R&D basement to see that stuff. You must have. I mean, you must have had to sign all kinds of NDAs and things like that to see all that.
Yeah, I had to sign it. I had to sign an NDA saying that I would never talk about this in any capacity, in any form whatsoever, including podcasts going forward. So it's true. So I had to really sign everything, and my phone is ringing. I'll answer that after this call. Yeah.
I wonder what that could be.
I have no idea. Yeah, no, it's the same number from Germany. They keep calling. I'm busy. So.
So for confused listeners and viewers, James has written a series of articles about T5 Mona Lisa that is obviously a satire for legal reasons. But we'll also share links with you in our description in YouTube video. So make sure to read those. They're very, very interesting and insightful.
Yeah.
I mean, as they say, there is always truth in any joke. So I think, James, you're really onto it. With internet of everything, not just things.
Let me just finish by just introducing this one concept. We're talking about SAP. SAP is very serious software. It helps run businesses worldwide. It never crashes. Now, I sit here and I tell a joke or two, but the thing is that whatever you do, you work in SAP or you work in a zoological park feeding the animals, bring joy to your work and share that joy with your client, I love SAP. I love the way that it works. I understand the logic. It took some time to understand it, but impart that not only the knowledge, but the joy and the confidence in working in such an excellent system like this. I'm so privileged, and I mean this out of the bottom of my heart, to be in an environment where I can contribute with, every bit of my intellect and soul, and, I'm rewarded with a fantastic career. So that's another piece of advice, for people starting off is, get involved in something that captivates you and excites you, and like SAP does, for me. And I think you'll, there's no guarantees in life, but I think you're on the right track.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So that is a great way to come to a close, I think.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's okay. That you cannot top that. That's
a great nice feelings plateau to land on perfectly.
Exactly. So
James, I'm a televangelist. What can I tell you?
So before we drop, James, is there anything that you would like to promote? Any projects that you're working on? Any, I don't know, new books coming out or anything like that? LinkedIn articles?
I've just joined a new project. So right now I'm full up imparting knowledge and confidence to the new client who's struggling with the implementation of an S/4HANA system. I work with very intelligent, smart people in a bicultural environment. I think another book will be coming at some point. For example, I do have a blog about my dad who started an IT business in Manhattan in the 1960s. And it's not really SAP related, but it is IT and software, from decades ago.
Yeah.
And maybe that explains a little bit as to, why I'm in this business.
Sure.
Being exposed to it, at the age of 6 and 8.
Shoot it. Yeah, we'll put that.
With tape drives and boxes of punch cards.
We'll put that blog in the notes too. Then we'll get the link from you after the show, and we'll put that blog in the notes too.
Yeah.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James, for being our guest today. It was very exciting to talk to you and get your perspective. And I really appreciate your advice, which I think is great. And every SAP career hopeful should really take to heart. And those already working with SAP, I think it wouldn't hurt to follow that advice either.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Paul, for co-hosting. And
as always,
thank you to our listeners and viewers. Please, as usual, like and subscribe, follow us on social media. And thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.